Hi everybody, welcome to AB Does Geography. Today I am going to start off this session with Let's Revise Section A from Paper 2, which is the next paper you're going to do. This is for Edexcel, GCSE 9 to 1, Specification B. However, much of what you find here will be useful if you do a different specification. Okay, it might be a bit longer this one, so maybe watch it in stages. So here we have what's going to be in your paper. There are 3 sections to it, and when you get onto the last section, you've got to be very careful about which questions you do. So Section A is the UK's evolving physical landscape. So that's some general background on what the physical landscape of the UK is like and why it's like it. You then get 8 marks worth of questions on coastal change and conflict. 7 marks on river processes, and then you get a big geographical issue to investigate using an assess type question that will be based on the themes that come out in those 3 bits before. They are difficult questions, but there's always clues. Okay, there's always clues. I'm going to be doing that today, Section A, and then in another video I'll do Section B, which is the human landscape, dynamic UK cities, which is London, another investigating type question, and then Section C is your fieldwork, and you will do question 8, which was coasts, Reculver, and question 10, which was Newham, Stratford, for the urban fieldwork. Okay, right. On the next slide, we have some key concepts. Keep going over this slide. It's really, really, really important. So for our physical landscapes, we are looking at the fact that rivers, coasts and glaciers have processes, erosion, transportation, deposition, that have shaped the land, and it's created uplands or highlands and lowlands. So rivers, coasts and glaciers have done that. But there are other factors that you need to take into account. Relief is the lie of the land, so whether it's high or low, so altitude, so whether it's mountainous or whether it's quite flat. Really important geography word, relief. The relief of the land is often dependent on the geology. Now, whoever wrote this spec liked a lot of rocks, and geology is a common theme that runs all the way through this physical section. And the geology, the rock type, and the structure of the rock play a really, really important role in explaining why we've got mountains where we've got them and why we've got lower land where we've got lower land. You also need to have a general understanding of rainfall patterns. So this means that the west and the north are wetter, and this is also where the land is higher because the rain sweeps in from the southwest across the Atlantic and smacks into the mountains, like the mountains of Snowdonia in Wales and the Highlands and the Lake District, etc. And the air is forced up, cools, condenses, and it rains. So the west of the country is wetter than the east. And then in amongst all of that, we've got human activity interacting with that physical landscape as well. I'm not going to go over the human key concepts now, but you've also got them. Keep coming back to this part of the lesson. So 1 minute 56, okay, really important. Right, let's have a look at the overview of the UK's physical landscape then. There's the UK, and what I would like you to be able to do by the end of this slot is be able to identify where the highlands are, so the uplands, where the mountains are and the uplands are, but where the lowlands are, and be able to give a bit of an idea as to why those uplands and lowlands are in those locations. And maybe you're sat there now thinking, well, I think I know where they are. That's great. And you'll be able to see whether you're right on the next slide. Don't forget Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, but the main areas we're looking at is this part of the UK. So geology, the rock type, has played a really, really critical role in explaining the UK's physical landscape, and it's created the uplands and the lowlands. There are 3 main different types of rock that you need to be aware of, which is igneous, sedimentary and metamorphic. And the igneous and metamorphic rocks are much more resistant to erosion. They're found in Scotland, but also other little pockets of areas, but primarily up in Scotland, and that's where the mountains are, because they are more resistant to erosion. Whereas in the southeast, we've got sedimentary rocks, primarily things like chalk, and they have created more lowlands. So rock type, really, really important because it helps explain rates of erosion. Obviously, we haven't got earthquakes and volcanoes anymore, but when the Earth was forming, this was something that was happening, and tectonic activity has shaped the landscape. It's uplifted the land, and it's created faults and folds in the landscape. I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. And then finally, during the last ice age, much of the UK was under a massive sheet of ice, kilometres thick, which has shaped and scoured the landscape, and when those glaciers retreated, they left behind a U-shaped valley and other glacial landforms, particularly in the Lake District in Scotland. This will only be a 1 marker, 2 marker, multiple choice type questions, okay? But do know some examples of igneous rocks like granite and basalt. Do know some examples of sedimentary rocks like chalk. You don't need to know how they were formed, but be aware that they're in layers with cracks and joints. And metamorphic rocks are things like marble. I'm sorry for my face being on that definition there. So if we look at some diagrams now, here we can see our metamorphic and igneous rocks primarily up in Scotland, explaining the highlands of Scotland. Then you've got your chalk beds down here, which is where we are, which are our lowlands, but also here as well. And then we've got some other really resistant rocks down here. So you've got in Cornwall, and you've also got some pockets of igneous rocks here. Will explain some of the sort of mountainous areas like Cumbria and parts of Wales like Snowdonia. Okay, so the rock types have helped determine or divide our country, if you like, into the uplands and the lowlands. Here during the Ice Age, look at the sheet of ice that was sat on top of the UK. That again has had a main impact up here. So in the Lake District, all those lakes are left behind when the glaciers retreat. Snowdonia, you can see examples of glacial landforms if you go there, and up in Scotland as well. Lots of evidence of big U-shaped valleys where when the glaciers have retreated, they've left these big U-shaped valleys. This is a map of the rainfall. You can see it's much wetter on this side of the country because the rain sweeps in from the southwest, from the ocean. This is the weather system, and as it hits the land, that side is much wetter. All these things come together. And here is the tectonic thing. So essentially, this was all lying in nice flat beds, if you like, and tectonic uplift has lifted the crust up, and what it's done is it creates faults and cracks and also folds the rock as well. So that's why sometimes they look like they're pointing in the wrong direction. So just focus on the fact that tectonic activity has folded or lifted the rocks up. It's also created a lot of igneous rock. So this would be a map of the relief. You may get something like this. The purple is the higher land, the green is the lower land. You can see where the higher land is, and it will tally with the rock type. It will tally with the rock type. And here we have a map showing where most of the people live, and we can see that most of the people live in the southeast, and in the central parts of the UK. Okay, so you can see it's roughly there. And the other thing you need to think about is how does the economic activity link to the relief and the weather patterns. So for example, up in Scotland, primarily the 3 Fs, the traditional activities of farming, fishing and forestry. It's quite extreme up there, quite difficult to build on, difficult to farm. So primarily it's forestry, those kind of activities. Whereas if you come down to the lowlands down here, you have much larger scale agriculture, big farms, and this is where most of the people live. Okay, much easier to build on, etc. Challenges in Cumbria, challenges in Wales as well, very wet, so you get a lot of sheep farming here. Again, quite difficult to farm. So think about how the geology all links together, how it shaped the landscape, but also how altitude and weather patterns have also shaped where people live and what people do for a living. Right, I'm going to pause there, and then I'm going to record another one, which will be part B, and I'm going to have a look at coasts. So I'm going to divide this down into several shorter videos.